welcome back. Hope you sort of enjoyed your break to the sort of not the final part of the session, because I'm sure we'll end up with a glass of beer or wine in our hand later on, either in here or over the road. But the success of this part, very, very much is, well, actually, first of all, thanks to PBJ and Nick for their presentation. Extremely enlightening and useful. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. But in order to make this part a real success, we really do genuinely need you guys to get involved now. And by that I mean, we've got 4 guys up here, 3 of them leaders within their businesses. Richard, obviously, is probably, probably the ugliest rugby player to play for England. No, probably one of the greatest English sportsmen ever. So there's a chance to really get inside these guys' heads now, ask them some pertinent questions. Although, in fact, I've got to say it now. Actually, Chaz Mason, my wife takes the iPad to bed every night and surfs Rightmove. Can you help me interest her in sex again?
Let's hope the evening comes along that way. I don't know where you are, Chaz. Do you want me to forward you that picture? In fact, Chaz, stand up, please.
So joking apart, we genuinely do need you guys to get involved as much as possible, and that more interactive it is, the most we'll get out of this, so please do get involved. Obviously you've been introduced to the 2 guys from Rightmove. I'll just quickly brief introduction to Trevor Mather on my left hand side. Trevor is currently President and CEO of Thoughtworks, who are a leading global IT consultancy. He joined there 11 years ago, and when he joined they were in 3 cities in the States only, with 250 people and a turnover of 250 million. Okay, is that right?
They were 30 million.
30 million, apologies, 30 million. Okay, 11 years later, after his tenure, under his sort of tenure, they're currently now in 5 continents, in 23 cities across the world, employ over 1,800 people and increasing as we go along, and as you heard earlier, turning 250 million pound over. So it's brilliant to have Trevor here. You've also heard he's probably the best recruiter in this room outside that, actually, because he seems to have employed half the people here. So, Trevor, why haven't you ever given us any of these things? We'll have to have a serious word with that later on. Those of you into your rugby, Richard, to my right, will need no introduction. Without wanting to embarrass him, he is an MBE. He probably is one of the greatest rugby players to have played for England. I believe he's got 71 caps for England. Did Clive Wood, you're the only English player that Clive Wood never dropped?
Correct.
Including Johnson and those?
Correct.
Did you ever lose in a British Lions shirt when you were wearing the British Lions shirt? Or is that a wrong stat?
I started one game that we lost, yeah, so I
But you
take
didn't finish on
responsibility for losing, yes.
So it'd be a great insight to sort of getting to understand Richard, obviously, the great success they had, part of the 2003 World Cup winning squad, which is probably, you know, the greatest English sporting achievement for the last sort of 20 years. So it'd be really interesting to get his insights into why they were so successful and some of the strategies that they deployed to actually get there. But also, he was recently part of the 4-man panel, the selection panel, and since we're a recruitment business, he's obviously a very, very good interviewer because he was one of the people responsible for hiring Stuart Lancaster into his current job as the current England coach, so maybe there'll be some questions that are centred around there.
Big
so,
clap for that, big clap for that. Yes, we were advisors to the selection of Stuart Lancaster, so yeah, we made some suggestions to the chief executive, and I believe he took our word and went with the right man.
Another one, James.
Remember, we're on. People might not know this, but we actually went to college together.
I thought you were at university.
Well, I went to university because I stayed 1 more year, and we actually turned into a university. So I graduated. So I've actually got his nuts at the moment.
Oh dear. Okay, let's sort of start off. Trevor. Obviously, we've just heard for the last sort of 45, 50 minutes in a very eloquent fashion from PBJ and Nick how they have made Rightmove such a success. In 30 seconds, and 30 seconds only, why Rightmove? Why are Thoughtworks so successful?
30 seconds. So it would help. I will say it would help if we were a 70% margin business. That is a rather big advantage that some people have. I think 3 or 4 things. I'll try and remember all 4. Number 1, we also, I didn't know this, we are also mandatory readers of the Jim Collins book, The Good to Great. Getting the right people on the bus is the single most important thing that we do, and be relentless in the hiring that you do. Even if demand far outstrips supply, we're a services business, you don't hire unless you've got the right people. So that's number one. Number two, flat structure, culture of empowerment, make mistakes, allow mistakes, innovate, recover, get better. Number three, leadership, something about diversity of thought from leadership. So it's not just the same people with the same mindset, it's people with different backgrounds. It's also consistency of leadership. So of the 20 people on our leadership team today globally, 18 of them have been there for more than 8 years, which is a huge thing, and I see the consistency the same thing. And then offer something more than just profitability for shareholders. Be a bit more of a bigger cause than just a company, and that can be societal good, it can be changing the industry, it can be whatever. And all of those things to me are the key elements of why we've managed to hang together in what's a pretty competitive and tough environment. And that was at least 2 minutes.
Okay, timekeeping clearly wasn't one of them, because that certainly wasn't things. Thank you, Trevor.
There
Hilly, Nick and PBJ mentioned within their sort of talk that if there's any doubt during the hiring process, then there's no doubt at all, that they will not hire the person. So as a member of the four-man panel that was interviewing Stuart at Lancaster, did you have any doubt?
We were an advisory group. And I don't mind talking about Stuart Lancaster and what he's achieved, but of course everything that went on in that hiring process, as I'm sure you would do in any business meeting you would hold, it is private. Stuart, in terms of what he achieved after a disastrous World Cup, not only getting knocked out in the quarter-final, more globally, the public perception of England rugby players had a massive job to do. And I don't even need to go back, because I'm sure people know what's happened, but when he took over, his main aim was to change the culture and the environment. And I think it was quite clear to see he achieved that pretty quick. Right. Trying to come back to basics rather than a training camp in Portugal, where it was warm weather. He took them up to Leeds to try and bring people back to earth, get them to understand what it's about. He dropped some high-profile players as well, because people are important. And I'm sure I'll be coming back to that statement again. And the one thing he did do was he gave people belief. He gave a group of men who weren't as experienced as the previous England team, and certainly not as experienced as the players they were coming up against with the likes of France, Ireland and Wales. He gave them the belief they could win. And he gave them a structure, very basic structure, to which they could deliver that outcome. And that would have certainly helped Stuart's case.
Thank you. Well advised, by the way. I think it's sort of come up a little bit here before, and just to pick up on some of the points that you mentioned there, Hilly, probably some of the themes that I've come across from what all the guys have said here is that probably to be successful, you need to look at the people, the culture and the environment, and leadership. And I think actually listening to the two guys standing there, clearly they've got good leadership, but in their humble way, probably wouldn't admit to that. But it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I'll open this to whoever wants to take it first. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the people, you need the leadership, or is it the culture? How does it work out? Nick?
Yeah, I actually think you do need the right leader. I think it starts there. And I think it's a number of qualities you need as a leader. I think you need people to be completely driven, and have complete belief, but then you need them to have humility as well. So you need a sort of a combination of skills. I think also got to believe. I think that hire people who are better than you. I think lots of people who want to hire people who aren't as good as them. Hire people who are better than you, because then they actually make you look good.
Yeah.
So it's having the confidence to hire great people. So I think it starts. I'd say it starts with the leader.
Okay. Trevor?
Same thing. People every time. You know, if you get the right people in the environment, the environment will create itself. And I think you need to be quite clear about what you're hiring for. So, you know, and I'm not talking about, you know, Java experience. I'm talking about the actual core of what you're hiring for. We say we're trying to hire for passion, for intellect, and for curiosity. And we look for those three things in everyone, and we're relentless about looking for things in that space. I think you've got to understand what those things are, but then everything then revolves around the person, the people that you hire.
I mean, PBJ, it's sort of come from both of you a little bit, that it's not about hiring people, it's about hiring the right people. And touching on what a thought worker looks like, what's the right move look like, or door number, or whichever.
I think the right door number might look a bit different to the right move. I think it's very similar. We might use different words, but ultimately, you know, someone who's smart enough to know what the right thing looks like, someone who's passionate enough to do the right thing and knock down the doors when the doors are in the way, and someone who never stops wanting to make something better. Someone who at some point will sit back and go, oh, at pace, I did that and I'm stopping. It just doesn't work. You know, it's gonna outroad quite quickly. And I think that's the sort of, whether you call it curiosity or questing, or it's all of those things.
Okay. I mean, so the first question, and you know, sort of Hilly, you know, what is it that, you know, from your experience either with Saracens now, which is obviously the successful side that they are, or with the England side of things, what does that make up that sort of drove that?
The success of the 2003 World Cup team, what Saracens are going through at the moment in terms of results, have all started with people, have all started with leadership, one person taking or being put or given that responsibility, being appointed, and them having a very, very clear objective of where they want to get to. Now, in sport, it is predominantly results driven. And with Clive, he started in 1997, and to be fair, the results weren't great. First 4 games we came up against top 3 teams in the world. 2 losses, 2 draws. Which, to be fair, in English rugby terms wasn't actually that bad, but in terms of a new coach trying to say, this is what I'm about, that's not a great start.
Yeah.
I think we went into this probably 5 nations then. We'd have won 3 of our 4 matches, but then there was the tour of doom, and all of a sudden things are imploding, and we're losing to every single team. Players are jumping off ship everywhere, but Clive stuck to his guns, and one of the biggest things he did was the right people, and he appointed the specialists in every specific area around him. So, there was a line-out coach, a scrummaging coach, a defence coach, attack coach, himself. He went about recruiting the best people to improve our fitness. He then went on to the resources as well, the financial. He got more money out of the RFU than anyone. Not saying that that is the wisest thing, because I completely think that it's not the best thing to have the big budget. And again, Stuart Lancaster's proved that to be the case. But one thing he was doing was constantly creating a group of players that he felt he could trust. And the moment a player was disloyal to the group, they were gone. And they may not fully understand why, but he had clear rules. And for instance, if you wrote something derogatory about the squad or him, then how's that going to help the group you're working with? So, one individual wrote something in autobiography about receiving notification of being dropped on the email. Boom, gone.
Name names, who was it?
That's Richard Cockrell. It's quite clear. And in 1999, we got knocked out in the World Cup, quarter-final, and again it was quite a big loss actually. And he had said, judge me on my results, and quite clearly he should have gone there. But there was a foresight to believe this is the right man. He has got the right group of people. He's got the core of a squad. Give him time to build it. And from there on in, that core squad just got bigger and bigger. The right people were there. And we were then having the luxury of having what we believed was a good team. And Clive, this is where rugby and business are so interlinked now. Clive was very business related. He would bring business ideas in sport, and quite often it flips back and forth. So we would sit down. I remember we went through a 12-month period where we beat Australia, New Zealand home and away. We beat South Africa at home. We beat every single team in Europe. But he was only prepared to say we were a good team. And of course, it came from the same writings. How are you going to be great? And you just constantly challenge yourself. And the people have got to be self-driven.
Right.
If you need to be motivated by someone else, and particularly rugby, they say the biggest improvements you make are in the hours of darkness. And I'm not saying that Christmas Day is dark, but Christmas Day to me was a day I knew I'd get one extra day over one of my competitors. Because I knew if I went and did a fitness session, there ain't many people who do that on Christmas Day. So that was my one chance to get that small thing. And again, we would talk about doing 100 things 1% better. The same as David Brailsford, who has done a phenomenal job with British cycling. And so for me, it is about the people. Talking of people, we had Michael Johnson come to Saracens yesterday, the great American sprinter. And he had I think it's like 11 years of just beating everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And he's rattling halfway through telling us that every single race he's won. And he just turned around and went, I just want to get this clear. I'm not arrogant, it's just the way it is. He was very good.
Just going back on the points, and thanks for that, some really insightful stuff there, Lee, but what do you think were the traits of the individuals that made up the successful teams that you were in, say, for example, the 2003 World Cup winning side, and, sort of the team that you're involved with at Saracens now? What can you see? Is there one single or a couple of single factors that made the team, what it is?
Leadership is quite clear. We talk about it at the top, but it has to filter all the way through. So I was very fortunate in that England team. When we played the World Cup final, 15 players started that game. 7 had captained their country before that day. So instantly we had people who were confident about making the right call at the right time. And Clive would call it teacup, thinking correctly under pressure. And everyone will remember Johnny Wilkinson for dropping that winning drop goal off his wrong foot. They seem to forget he missed 3 already before that. Could have saved us a lot of heartache. But the whole build-up to that winning drop goal was the result of losing to Wales in 1999 at Wembley by less than 3 points, losing to Scotland at Murrayfield in the Grand Slam decider in 2000, Ireland in 2001. These were all games we were losing by less than 3 points. They say in life...
Does that mean Scotland will be good next year?
Scotland. They're on a high at the moment.
I mean, just on the same, the sort of what the Hills make about leadership is sort of quite right. I mean, obviously you've got 3 leaders of very successful businesses. If we were to put 4 guys from each of your businesses up here now, what would they say about you 3 then?
Shall I go and ask them, Bertie?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Okay. Darren?
Perfectionists.
Actually, Darren's the one who, after 6 months at Rightmove, I said, how are you finding the job? And he said, well, I think pretty well, actually, because PBJ doesn't have a go at me, half as much as he did in the first 3 months.
Yeah, driven.
Am I?
I can't think of another word besides perfectionist and driven. No, sorry.
Now, Mike's got another question, actually, for Nick on Rightmove.
Okay, my question was, if you could go back to 2001, what would you do differently?
2001. You know what? I think we were sort of pretty lucky with the decisions we made, and sort of I don't think we can quite believe. I remember back then we said, just think if we could make £10 million of revenue and have a £5 million cost base. We were thinking, wow, that would be incredible. So I look at these sort of graphs and pinch myself. So I don't feel like there's anything that we fundamentally look back and think, I wish I'd done that differently. Not because I think everything was perfect, but I think we got the big decisions right. And actually, if you go on getting the right people, and you get they help you work it out. So I think probably the biggest thing was we didn't think we knew what we were doing. We thought, let's get some bright people, and they'll help us work it out. And we had the humility to, I think we say it now. We say, there is no, we're still working this out every day, and we need people, everyone in the company to help us work it out. So there isn't, and there's lots of things I do look back in my life, think I wish I'd done that differently. But actually, at Rightmove, I feel fortunate that we got pretty lucky with the decisions.
And on that theme, Trevor, is there anything that you look back at the decisions that you perhaps made, where you go, thought that is the best idea in the world, it's going to be an absolute fortune, or it's going to be the real sort of business driver, and it's turned out to be a bit of a dead dog? Or...
I think there's two aspects of the answer, really. One is, I'm a great believer in make many small bets rather than one big one, and therefore you can make many mistakes. And so I've got a complete array of mistakes that we've made, but they've all been small that you can recover from. And I think the best sort of culture is one that says, this didn't work, but what have we built and what can we change it towards, rather than we should just stop it. And I think we've done a pretty good job of starting thinking this is the right answer, realizing that we really were stupid, and then 3 months later going, now we know more, we can move it in this direction, and that's been a success. I think the biggest sort of thing that if I looked at the themes of things that we did wrong, we went through a stage in about 2007 where I call it, we followed the money, and where a client wanted us, we would be there, and when there were more than one client, we'd go after it big time. And we never thought about the longer term. We thought about the immediate opportunity right in front of us. And frequently, what we hadn't done was step back and go, what are we trying to build here? Does it fit with what we're trying to be as a company, etc.? So the classic example is Hong Kong. And for any of you who have been to Hong Kong, it's kind of a crazy place, right? In every way. And we had huge opportunity in Hong Kong 2007. It was just fantastic. We threw a whole load of things in there. And, to be honest, financial services in general is not a great fit with our culture. And we knew that, but we went after it because there were huge margins, huge money, and everything. And we went after it big time. And then, of course, the collapse hit. And no one bought anything in Hong Kong for about 2.5 years, if anyone was out there during that time. And, I was the one that had to go out there and close everything. And I think the mistake, that was an example, but what we were doing at the time was following big time any opportunity for revenue. And to be honest, we were too big a company at that stage to just do that. I can understand why you do that when you're a startup, but when you're a bit bigger, you've got to think about it a bit broader.
Okay. Arguably, Rightmove had their World Cup final, I suppose, when you floated, whatever year it was. And after that, continued success we've seen from the sort of very impressive graphs. Ellie, your World Cup was in 2003. If you look at it in 2011, it's certainly not the Rightmove graph. Why do you think that occurred?
Well, there was a report written, and let's face it, everyone's seen it.
It's to do with dwarf throws.
Well, let's go on to dwarf throw, because...
Yeah, let's.
Oh, not again, Hilly. I've had enough.
There's been a lot made of this dwarf throw, and I think we need to clarify some messages. The guys went into a bar. Those dwarfs wanted to be there. It was a dwarf throwing competition. If you're a dwarf who doesn't like it, you don't walk into the bar and protest, do you? So, I can't personally see what the problem was. So, what was the question?
Why did you win the World Cup in 2003? Why did we end up in the shambles in 2011?
I think we were very fortunate in 2003, the combination of the players we had. I've spoken about the leadership, and I certainly don't believe the likes of Delalio, Johnson, Back.
But Johnson was one of the lead. You said there were 7 captains. He was the leader.
He was the leader
of your team,
And that group did not have them. And I also believe that, like I say, we were very fortunate with the quality of the ended up being a 31-man squad. And English rugby was not in as good state there for sure. And I don't think Jono was probably as hard as he probably wanted to be and should have been, but I think he felt that in terms of group harmony that it was best to try and allow the players to take control of their own destiny. And I mean, let's face it, I mean, in 2007 when England made the World Cup final, one of the players that played in that match describes that team as a pub team. You know, so, and let's face it, France in 2011 were not far off that themselves, yet they nearly beat New Zealand in the final in New Zealand. So, you know, there is a lot to be said about how a team can galvanise themselves.
Right. But that's a key thing, because we're all in business here, and we can, you know, you have turnovers and you try and sort of regenerate, just like a player, you know, they retire, etc. People have to move on. How do you guys continue reinventing yourself and keep setting those standards that you need to maintain to keep, you know, the echelons of where you guys' businesses are?
Alcohol.
Camping.
I mean, for me, I literally changed my role, and you know, I've been CEO for whatever I am for 5-6 years now, and I change my role and my focus every 2 years because I get bored. I'm like any other person, I get bored, and if I don't do it, I'm just going to carry on doing the same thing. So I look for someone to do the stuff that I used to do, and I do something different instead. And I think when you're in a growing company, it's easy to do. I don't know whether you can do that in a situation where you're not growing, but when you are, I find that quite easy, actually.
Does that mean you can increase your salary every 2 years?
No comment.
I went to the top and came right down to the bottom.
You touched on the environment that sort of Clive Woodward sort of created, and you know, sort of the specialists and what have you. Have you guys, in sort of trying to create businesses, deliberately gone out to say, right, well, we're going to create this high-performance elite environment, this elite culture, or is that not possible necessarily to do in the business environment?
I think maybe you go out and try and create it. I'm not sure you can create it. I think you have to want it, and I absolutely believe that you have to demonstrate it. And if you demonstrate it and pick a bunch of people who are absolutely passionate about it and they want to demonstrate it, you might be lucky and it might happen. But I think if there's not a magic formula where you buy the book and follow everything Jim says and jobs are good.
There's one thing that's quite a big difference, I think, between the sports and the business world. Is in general, the sports world is it's a results-focused environment, and you're going towards you're trying to do something. Whereas I think businesses, in general, most businesses, and I actually have a fight about the world of quarterly results and everything else, which I don't think is helping anyone, but the businesses are trying to be there for forever, for hundreds of years, and so you've got to think a lot greater and deeper about what's going to be there for the future and what's going to evolve. And a lot of successful sports teams are about how do you optimize for one particular event or one particular time phase. And it's interesting to see how that's happened with England and it fell down, whereas at someone like Manchester United or something like that, where the leaders stayed the same and they tried to evolve that over many years. It's actually interesting to see how the different sports teams have those different philosophies compared to business. But
there is no one
right.
fix. I mean, Clive was all about high performance. Everything was about improving, scientifically, mentally, everything you could. But if I look at, South as a club I've been involved with now for 19 years, when I first started, a really unfashionable club. I mean, literally, if you became an England player, leave. Jason Leonard, Ben Clark, Dean Ryan. As soon as you show any potential, you're going to be handpicked off by one of their top clubs. I deliberately joined because we'd been relegated into what was then Division 2, and Division 1 was top. 2 years we worked our way back up, and we were very fortunate. We had a Nigel Ray, big property particularly, who came in to support the club as chairman. And I'm sure if someone had told him how much money he'd had to put in and how much time and effort it was going to involve, he never would have done at that particular time. But been unbelievably loyal throughout the whole thing. But from '96 when it first started, we brought in some of the best players in the world, regardless of whether they were at their prime or not. And as a result, we won the Tetley Bitter Cup, the National Cup competition in 1998. But if you look at 96 to... even 2008. You know, in the early years, the players we had come through were, our back line was Kieran Bracken, Michael Liner, Philippe Sella, Gavin Johnson was the 1995 South African World Cup winning fullback, Richie Wallace the Ireland fullback, we had Francois Pienaar, we had Paddy Johns, Irish international.
So you say it's not necessarily about the people then? We've heard it here all the
No,
time.
but that's what I'm saying. We were able to buy an instant success,
Right.
but it never continued for longevity.
And why do you think that was then?
Because you didn't build any culture. You didn't build any ability to, you weren't bringing a young player through who was the same. You weren't bringing someone who had the same ethos as that person. You were completely changing it year after year after year. And when results didn't go right, we'll get rid of 10, we'll get rid of 12, we'll get 12 new ones in. Now, when Brendan Venter, who was, I would, quite clearly put down as the man who revolutionised Saracens in the last 3 years, came in, instantly he said, right, I'm getting rid of 17 players. And again, he went uproar again. But the one thing he did was he came in with a very, very clear person he was looking for. So he made it sound as if everyone had decided this was the type of character he wanted, but you can pretty much damn say Brendan had decided he just got everyone to buy in. And there were core values: honesty, discipline, work rate. And if you did not exhibit those qualities, you were gone. And in the first 2 pre-seasons he ran, one year after the other, there were 2 players were left by mutual consent because they did not exhibit 3 of those core. One of them was lacking or was disruptive to the group. But when he also came in, he spoke to the players about creating memories at the start of the season. He said in 12 months' time, or less than 12 months' time, we could win the Premiership. But if we haven't created any memories along the way, in a year's time we're going to hand that trophy back and it will mean absolutely nothing to us. So the first thing they did was they did a month's worth of really, really hard training. They then got on a plane to Cape Town. For 10 days, they played 2 matches and trained for probably 20 minutes. The rest of the time was about spending time together, getting to know one another. And being South Africa, there's a safety issue you've got to think about. So they had, something like 4 or 5 combis, like minibuses. So each night they went out and they had an activity every night. The players had to decide what bar they were going to, but they all went to the same bar. If they moved from that bar, they all moved to the next bar, and they wouldn't come home until their combi was full. So they could get in at whatever time they wanted, whether it was 6 in the morning, but at 9 o'clock, when the minibuses were leaving again, you had to be there, correct and present, on time, regardless of how rough you felt, because there was a team activity of walking up Table Mountain. You were going wine tasting together. They were going cage diving. So,
Any dwarfs? I mean, if they're in a bar, they're in a bar.
I don't think they do dwarfs in South Africa, unfortunately. But it was all about creating these people that would want to fight for one another on a pitch. And quite interestingly, 12 months later, the players, they played in Premiership final for the first ever time. Narrowly lost to Leicester. And they brought in a 4th core value, which was humility. So there was an element of, look, you've just done something amazing in a 12-month period, and let's not get carried away. That could have been a fluke if we haven't got the right core values, the right temperament person. But also an understanding that for a group of blokes who are aged between, the players are aged anywhere between this year 18 to 37. In that group age range, they're going to experience the highs and lows. So we're talking engagement, marriage, divorce. It's fact of life, unfortunately. Players have got, might have family friends or family who terminally ill and having to cope with that. You've got birth. You've got all these things going on, but if you've got no understanding of what the pain someone's going through, that person is just going to be left and they're just going to drift and they're going to go out of the group and they'll never get back in. And that was the same, and unfortunately it was part of the 2003 squad. Tragedy was a way for bonding with players. Martin Johnson lost his mum to cancer. Ben Cohen's dad was beaten out as a bouncer, got beaten up outside a nightclub and died. And Will Greenwood, first son, died like 45 minutes after being born. Now, humility was the fourth core value. You have to have that. If you don't know about the person you're working next to,
It's interesting because in the early days of Rightmove, I don't know if you do it anymore, that was part of it. I know you did snowboarding trips, cycling, camping, actually heading into campsites in North Devon next weekend. If anyone knows,
it's
please.
not next weekend, but if anyone does know the owners of Bayview Farm, they're not picking up the phone.
That was a big part of your early days, and I'm sure you obviously shared skinny rabbits there together. But what's your take on that?
Well, I think certainly when we interviewed people, and we talked about interviewing, well, we said, actually, you're going to spend a lot of time at work. We were in those early days. You were there, you were there nearly every day, especially when you launch a new website and it's going down every night. So we talked about actually, you want to get on with the people you work with because actually you spend a lot of your life, big part of your life there. So let's recruit people who we actually get on with and we want to spend time with. And I think then, to your point, you actually naturally get to know them, and we did. So then you liked them, so you spent time there. And we did lots of activities, and we still do. The skinning the rabbit, we're camping. We've been camping for the last Thursday, Friday, 2 weeks ago, Thursday, Friday last week, and we're going camping again Thursday, Friday this week. So and all of us, sleeping in teepees, we're all there cooking over the campfire. So we're still doing it, and it's not that we're sort of forcing ourselves to do it. It's actually a big part of your life. And some of my best friends now sort of come from Rightmove. Still as a gang, we go cycling, as you say, we go skiing, and there's lots of people who get on and do things within Rightmove. I think it's absolutely key. Is at that point that you actually know about each other, you actually start caring about each other, and you care, what people are going through. And as you say, it was a lot of drinking when we first started because we were all quite young. I think the average age of Rightmove in those early days was 23 or 24. And now it's about 34 or 35, so obviously
You drink twice as much.
I'm bringing the average age up. And we've gone through a lot, So there's now, marriages. I don't know how many Rightmove weddings there have been, we were counting, but there's been about sort of 11 Rightmove couples who've got together. Lots of children, so there's been sort of bereavement. So you kind of grow up and you're more of a family unit. And you really care about the people. So.
We interface with other businesses, obviously, just through the nature of our work, and it doesn't happen in all the environments. Some successful businesses it does, but it actually doesn't happen in the environments. It's really interesting to see probably the most successful sports team as well. That was a core value where it's all set as well.
But I also think, I think with Rightmove and PBJ touched on it, I think you either love it or you hate it. It's sort of one of those. So you either come in and you think this is great, or you think, I really don't like this, because you can't hide. You have to give more of yourself. You actually have to be part of it. You can't be a passenger. You'll get pushed out.
But it's quite interesting that you go camping, and like Saracen, another initiative is a player must have probably 2 one-week holidays during the season because they must get away, they must get refreshed.
Yeah.
But even Google, though, I believe they have something like a 20% rule, which means that for any one day in a week, they are allowed to choose any activity they want. So it might be in the office, and they can play table tennis against people, or they can go off and play golf or whatever. And that 20% period, they attribute to some of the biggest innovations they've made in terms of Google Maps and the little add-ons. Because people have had time away from the office, and that's probably what your camping trip is actually instilling, because you're talking about it in a different environment and actually brainstorming as well.
Yeah. I won't show you some of the videos we made of the activities, but you're absolutely right. I think a lot happens outside of work when you're just sort of chewing the fat, having a few beers, because you naturally talk about the business. You don't have to, but you naturally do.
And the amount of Rightmove babies before the marriage?
Yeah. Look, I'm anxious to be sort of running out a bit of time here, and to be honest with you, I could sit here all day and sort of chew the fat, to be honest with you. But Is there any questions that anybody's got from the floor that they'd like to ask any of the guys? And look, I did say we want you to be interactive, so please do.
Richard, good evening. Do you think you could ask Stuart not to try so hard next year and give the rest of the country a chance?
Sorry, who's that director that?
Rugby related. No, question I had there was, how do you manage ego? I mean, there's building successful teams and success breeds success, but at some point you're feeding the monster. How do you manage that?
In rugby terms, sorry.
Well,
But again, Stuart Lancaster has recently done it by taking the players up to Leeds. Yeah, that was one of the ways of engaging with people, getting the players' feet back on the ground, that they are not superstars, and look at the grassroots of rugby. It was quite interesting even within his first week on that training camp in Leeds. They needed something like, I think it was 8. They said, look, we need a maximum of 8 players to host an under-13 rugby tournament that was going to be held near the hotel. So they sent Dylan Hartley off to go and find maximum 8 players. And he came back to Stuart and said, look, I'm sorry, I've actually got a problem. I've got 24 people volunteering to do this under-14 or under-13 tournament tomorrow. And Stuart's like, well, that's not a problem. We'll all go there. And I think that is great. One of the bits with Saracens, it's the humility part is, you ask any journalist now which club they quite enjoy going to see and interacting with players, because they're not just going to sit there bolt standard answer. They'll come to Saracens now because there are stupid challenges going on. I mean, literally, our chief executive is bonkers, and it just drips all the way down to our forwards coaches. And I won't go into the details of some of the forward coaches' presentations, but you don't forget them.
There are some ladies.
Well, they don't care. If a lady comes into the presentation, she's volunteered to watch it. That's their philosophy. So, but a player will remember, because it's all word association, and quite clearly the players understand what's going on the weekend.
Just a quick one that we've got.
Just on that egos thing, I don't think you can manage egos. I think you don't hire people with egos. And that's, you see it in the interview. If you get a CV and people have got lots of letters after their name or their middle initial, it's just, oh God, egos. Shout ego. Shout ego. Instead of,
I'll give you my number on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Don't hire people with egos. It's not about sort of trying to manage them. It's about having people who really don't have those egos. I think the best people have huge humility. They feel sort of insecure, it's the opposite. It's trying to sort of say, no, actually, you're doing a bloody good job, because they don't think they are. They're usually the people who, are most valuable to a business.
If you do have an ego, the best way is for the senior players to knock it out.
Yeah. That's true.
So what you do as well?
We do every year we pick 40 of our people around the world, and we put them through a leadership development process, and they're the potential best leaders for the future for us, and they go through 360 and every other HR terminology thing that you can think of to go through and pummel it out of it. And actually we look for 10 to 15% of those people to either mutually agree that Thoughtworks isn't the right place for them to stay, or for us to help counsel them that elsewhere is better. And that's generally because their belief in their own ability is too big a gap between where we think they actually are. But if you don't give them that feedback, then you're doing the wrong thing for the company in the long term.
Thanks, guys. Any more questions? Baz, do you want to come on quickly? Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, hi. I think for the person behind me, I think about his sex life. I think maybe rightkarmasuitramove.co.uk might be the right one. But on a more serious note, actually, with your business model, obviously page impressions count. That's kind of very important key with most internet businesses. But the thing about your website is that, for example, if you want to contact an agent, you have an 0844 or number, or it's basically a core revenue number. I can't believe you're making much money out of that. But the trouble is, you're actually driving people off your website by having that number there, because typically a person will try and find the normal phone number and you'll go to the agency's website, find that number, and you're actually diverting traffic from your website.
Yeah.
So, my advice is, why are you doing that? And maybe you should look at just publishing a normal phone number.
Stop
No, I think it's a very good point. We did it initially because there used to be local rate numbers, so actually if you were phoning sort of outside the area, it was seen as better value. But I think over time those numbers have become not local call rates. But also we did to track how many phone calls, because we wanted to sort of, as PBJ talked about, it wasn't just about price, it was about showing value. So it gave us a way of measuring the number of phone calls we delivered to a customer and allowed us to show value, not just the email inquiries, the phone inquiries. But I think you're quite right. We don't make any money out of it, so it's not sort of, as you say, we didn't try and do gimmicky advertising or stuff. We've stuck to making money from, having an audience and getting the properties in front of that audience. So we are currently sort of looking at how we get those back to sort of geographic numbers, because I think you're right, they do put people off.
Just get the traffic back to your website.
Any more questions? Time for one more question? Yep.
Hi. Question for Richard. Apparently you're known as the silent assassin.
Watch yourself.
Yes, silent assassin because of your shrewd drives forward and whatnot. So, being in the world of corporate environments, I'm often torn when I go into a new company between establishing myself very quickly, delivering short-term results and building my reputation that way, or keeping my head down initially and establishing myself over long term by delivering something of high quality over a longer period and building my reputation that way. So how do you strike a balance between both, basically, to sort of get that initial boom and then deliver something long term as well?
I think the key is you've got to be honest to yourself. What you're about, how you want to portray yourself. I'd like to think I had talent and I had potential, but I think there were probably far more skillful players than me in my position who were similar age or, as I get older, within a few years of myself. So my philosophy was always about just trying to work as hard as I can, and if I do everything I can in training, in my preparation, in maintaining my physical and mental state, then if that's the best I can do, that's the best I can do. And it wasn't about column inches for me. It certainly wasn't about how many appearances I could do. I was actually almost the opposite. To me, it was about I was a rugby player, and that's what I wanted to be, all I ever wanted to be. And to have the opportunity to do it and to be paid for it, I didn't want it to explode in front of myself, and I certainly didn't want to be on a rugby pitch and feel like there was a player better than me and therefore I should step aside. And I was always looking for that, that extra edge. And I mean, the last 2 years of my rugby career, unfortunately I played, after a number of quite a few knee operations, I was actually bone on bone on my knee, which meant I wasn't playing off two legs. And I know people knew that I was in pain, they knew I had issues, but I just wanted to find anything during that week that could set me apart. So I didn't have to tell people I was going into the swimming pool at 7 o'clock in the morning to do a fitness session. All they knew was that I was fit enough to play. They didn't know how I was doing it. And that was my drive, and that was how I coped with myself. Whether that's answered your question, possibly not. But there are players that are flamboyant. I mean, Austin Dealey's one for a start. I mean, not that he ever amounted to much. But there was a bloke who felt really confident, and he felt like he had to put himself out there. And for those who knew him, they took it with a pinch of salt. For those who were probably outside the group, they thought, they probably have a few reservations. But people just want to play with team players. They want to play with people who are there. And it doesn't matter what sort of character you are, as long as they know that the end result that you're producing at the end of each day, at the end of each week, each match, is there producing the results, and they're doing it for the good of everyone, then people they'll put up with it. I mean, you know, Saracen is one of our most outstanding players, doesn't necessarily fit the mould of the 4 core values. But he's an outstanding rugby player, and when he needs to do the bits and pieces, and he does work hard, he will do it, and therefore players are prepared to go along with him. And they'll take the Michael out of him constantly. You know, before our last Wembley game, we had McFly with the band playing at the match, and they came in to do some challenges, and he stupidly said, "Oh, I'll have an 18 challenge against one of them," not knowing that one of them had done, "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here." So what he thought was going to be eat as much as you could, turned into lamb penis. Now, while he's doing that, all the boys are singing "It's All About You," and actually dropping his name into it. So I think the boys know how he is. They know he knows how they feel, but it never gets out of control. So I think you could accommodate most personalities as long as they're there for the good of the group.
Okay, guys, look, we could talk on all night here, and it really has been a pleasure to sort of have the insights of you guys here. It really is. So a big thank you for that side of things. I mean, as a business, obviously we're in the game of sort of placing people and putting the right candidates best for our clients. And we live and die by the way we interview people and the way we present people. So going back to Stuart Lancaster, really, has he got what it takes to be a success and have that winning formula, or are you going to get the blame for it?
No, I've just advised them to make the worst decision in their history. If you want to listen to a man on an interview panel, as in up here, phenomenal. So clear in terms of goals, objectives, and how he's going to achieve it, and the way he's going to bring people through. Anyone who got appointed for the England job for the next 7 games up until the end of November is on a hard wicket. Three internationals in South Africa, then to play the top 3 teams in the world, sandwiched with Fiji, who could knock your head off at any moment. I'm sure in that 7 games, some questions are going to be asked, and anyone who had been given that job was going to have to come up against that.
And we'll just blame you, so don't worry. Right,
well,
guys,
I'm coming to you for a job.
Guys, once again, look, thank you very much, guys. It really has been, I know you put a lot of time and effort and thought into tonight, and I hope you guys have really sort of appreciated it. They really have given some great pleasure to me personally, and hopefully to you guys as well, and the insights which they have into their respective lives. So, guys, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Bloody warm. There are some drinks around that side there. We probably will pop over the road to the pub as well if people want to join us. But thanks for coming. Thanks very much.